What happens when a US president is treated like a Middle Eastern monarch? In this jaw-dropping expose, we dive into Donald Trump's $3.2 trillion 0 cents tour of the Gulf, complete with fighter jets, gold-plated deals, and a royal lifestyle inspired by Dubai. This isn't diplomacy, this is empire-building Trump style. A royal arrival fit for a king. When Donald Trump touched down in Riyadh in May 2025, it wasn't a typical state visit. It was a scene straight out of a monarchy. 4 thunderous F-15 fighter jets flanked Air Force One as it soared through Saudi skies. But it wasn't a red carpet awaiting him. It was a regal lavender one, symbolizing Saudi heritage and crafted specifically for this singular moment. The atmosphere was electric. Trump didn't just walk out as a former president, he descended like a king. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, dressed in ceremonial robes, greeted him with a warm handshake and the traditional Arabic coffee served from a golden dala pot. The coffee wasn't just a refreshment, it was a gesture of respect and brotherhood, deeply rooted in centuries-old Arab custom. The visual spectacle was intentional. Saudi Arabia pulled out all the stops. Military bands, ceremonial guards, gilded motorcades. Even the presidential convoy included armored Mercedes-Maybach C680S, each valued at over $500,000, 0 cents. The procession passed by banners showing both Trump and MBS emblems of a bold new alliance between two giants of global power. Trump was escorted directly to the opulent Ali Yamama Palace, where walls aligned with Italian marble and 24-karat gold moldings shimmer beneath Swarovski crystal chandeliers. Security teams estimated the reception event alone cost over $20 million, 0 cents, highlighting the Saudis' determination to make an impression. This wasn't just about show, it was a power signal to the world, to China, to America's allies, that Saudi Arabia was rolling out the royal carpet for a deal maker, not just a diplomat. In a region where symbolism speaks louder than policy papers, this lavish welcome was designed to set the tone. This wasn't diplomacy as usual. It was Trump's first step into a trillion-dollar courtship that could reshape America's position in the Middle East. The $600 billion 0 cents defense bombshell. It wasn't just a handshake and a photo op. Donald Trump walked into Saudi Arabia and dropped a $600 billion 0 cents bombshell of diplomacy. In a ballroom gleaming with gold and lit by $250,000 0 cents baccarat chandeliers, Trump and Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman signed the largest defense deal in US history. At the heart of the agreement, a $142 billion 0 cents weapons package with titans like Lockheed Martin, Raytheon and Boeing. Think F-35 fighter jets, missile defense systems and cyber warfare tech, all made in America. Trump promised it would generate up to 2 million jobs across American cities, from Huntsville to... But that was just the beginning. Saudi Aramco committed a jaw-dropping $50 billion, 0 cents, to US energy infrastructure, refineries, clean fuel projects, and green tech innovation. Another $100 billion, 0 cents, was pledged toward next-gen technologies, including AI, biotech, and smart city design, aligning with MBS's Vision 2030. Even US steel and construction companies weren't left out. A $75 billion 0 cents infrastructure cooperation initiative meant American firms would help build Saudi airports, railways, and mega developments, paid for in full by Saudi investment. And here's the kicker. The Saudis agreed to purchase American goods, equipment, and services at a rate 5 times faster than under previous administrations. The White House called it the most economically consequential diplomatic visit in 50 years. Critics claimed it was over the top, but Trump spun it as pure strategy, exporting military strength, boosting domestic jobs, and keeping adversaries like China and Russia on the back foot. Love him or hate him, Trump came with a pen and left with signatures worth more than the GDP of many countries. In the annals of presidential travel, this wasn't a tour, it was a $600 billion 0 cents power play, redefining what it means to win friends and influence kingdoms. The Qatar connection and the $400 million 0 cents gift. And a move straight out of a royal fantasy, Qatar rolled out the red carpet, and then some. When Donald Trump touched down in Doha, he wasn't just greeted with a handshake, he was handed the keys to a customized Boeing 747 worth a staggering $400 million. 0 cents. A personal gift from the Emir of Qatar himself. Gold trim, onboard spa, crystal dining suites. This jet wasn't just transportation, it was a flying palace. But the extravaganza didn't end there. Qatar Airways announced a $96 billion, 0 cents, order of 160 Boeing aircraft, one of the largest commercial aviation deals ever signed. The sheer scale of the purchase promised over 150,000 American jobs, injecting billions into US manufacturing and reinforcing Trump's America First economic vision with dramatic flair. Yet back in Washington, eyebrows were raised. Critics questioned the legality of accepting such a lavish gift from a foreign leader, pointing to the US Constitution's emoluments clause. Was this diplomacy or indulgence? The White House pushed back hard, stating the plane would be used for official purposes and could save taxpayers' money on security and maintenance in the long run. Supporters praised it as smart economics with international sparkle. But what's undeniable is this: Trump knew how to turn diplomacy into spectacle. He wasn't just cutting deals, he was rebranding American leadership with a blend of business, symbolism, and bold moves that made headlines worldwide. From the golden interiors of the aircraft to the symbolism of Middle East alliances forged with wealth and ambition, this moment wasn't just about luxury. It was a strategic power display that reinforced Trump's persona as a negotiator who doesn't just talk the talk, but flies the skies in a $400 million 0 cents jet to prove it. $200 billion, 0 cents. A new global power move. Forget traditional diplomacy. Donald Trump turned the Middle East into a $3,200 billion 0 cents deal room. In a whirlwind tour, he didn't just shake hands, he redefined US foreign policy, shifting from boots on the ground to dollars on the table. At the core of his plan, redirecting global capital and cutting off rivals like China at the knees. From Saudi Arabia alone, Trump locked in a $600 billion 0 cents mega deal, followed by Qatar's jaw-dropping $96 billion 0 cents aviation agreement, and a cascade of tech, energy, and infrastructure contracts that would make Wall Street blush. But it wasn't just about the numbers, it was the message. Trump's doctrine said loud and clear, "We win through wealth, not war." No more long, costly military campaigns. Instead, he wielded economic gravity, pulling investment, partnerships, and influence toward the US through billion-dollar contracts and exclusive access. It worked like a magnet. Major American companies like Lockheed Martin, Boeing, ExxonMobil, and Oracle stood to gain massively. Thousands, if not millions, of US jobs were on the table. And the symbolism? Perfect. Trump stood shoulder to shoulder with royalty, cementing ties over gold-plated contracts and lavender carpets, not battle plans. It was diplomacy with a businessman's handshake and a billionaire's bravado. In short, this was a new power play, one that replaced tanks with tech, missiles with money, and military posturing with mutually profitable partnerships. Whether you loved him or loathed him, one thing was clear: Donald Trump didn't just visit the Middle East, he rewrote the rules of global power. And he did it with $3,200 billion 0 cents on the line. From guns to gold, shifting US foreign policy. This wasn't your grandfather's foreign policy. This was Trump's economic playbook, and it tore up the old rules. No more focusing on bases, bombs, or boots. Trump's Middle East tour shifted America's approach from war zones to wealth zones, from military hardware to hard cash. Instead of deploying troops, Trump deployed contracts. Gulf states, impressed by his business-first strategy, committed billions to American infrastructure, clean energy, and tech. Saudi Arabia alone pledged $50 billion, 0 cents in energy projects. Qatar inked aviation deals worth $96 billion, 0 cents. Altogether, more than $3,200 billion, 0 cents, in deals flowed under his watch, redirecting capital from rivals like China straight into the US economy. Trump envisioned a market-driven empire, where American influence wasn't built on firepower but financial muscle. It wasn't just about keeping the peace. It was about monetizing the alliance, pipelines instead of battle lines, satellites instead of submarines, software over soldiers. While previous administrations sank billions into endless wars, Trump cashed in on diplomacy, turning red carpet welcomes into billion-dollar opportunities. The $142 billion 0 cents defense deal with Saudi Arabia wasn't just about arms. It came with energy collaborations, clean tech ventures, and access to one of the fastest-growing regions on Earth. He called it a tremendous win, and for American workers, from steel towns to Silicon Valley, it might just have been. With every handshake, Trump brokered future jobs, revived struggling sectors, and brought a sense of business-savvy patriotism back to foreign affairs. It's bold, it's brash, and it's pure Trump. Transforming foreign policy from battlefield alliances into boardroom strategy. Instead of tanks rolling out, energy pipelines were signed. Instead of deploying ships, new tech campuses were funded. In short, he replaced war plans with wealth maps, and in doing so, he reimagined American power. Not through fear, but through finance. That's the Trump Doctrine, written in gold ink and sealed with $3,200 billion, 0 cents, worth of deals. A lavish life inspired by Dubai. Diplomacy has never looked this rich. Taking cues from Dubai's glittering skyline and luxury-soaked lifestyle, Donald Trump didn't just arrive in the Gulf with handshakes, he arrived with a brand. Trump understood the message: in the Middle East, style is strategy. So he matched the playbook. His hotel-style diplomacy included custom Rolls-Royces, mirrored skyscrapers, and palace-sized entourages. Every image, down to the 24-carat coffee spoons, was curated to resonate with Gulf royalty, and it worked. While previous leaders emphasized policy papers and cautious tones, Trump showcased trillion-dollar glamour. His partnership tour through Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the UAE wasn't just about inked deals, it was a pageant of power and prestige. Think $400 million 0 cents Boeing 747S as diplomatic gifts. Think gala dinners with menus etched in gold leaf. Think armored Cadillac limousines polished to diamond brilliance. The Crown Prince himself rolled out not a red, but a lavender carpet, symbolizing national pride and a clear recognition that Trump was not a mere guest. He was a global power broker who spoke their luxury dialect fluently. Inspired by the Dubai model, Trump realized that in this part of the world, soft power didn't wear a suit, it wore a Rolex. And instead of projecting influence through military bases, he projected it through $50,000 0 cents diamond-studded cufflinks and multi-million-dollar hotel architecture deals. In fact, Trump hotels began exploring branded partnerships in Gulf cities shortly after his visit. Meanwhile, influencers, royals and billionaires from the region were actively reposting his images, a true fusion of diplomacy and digital-era marketing. This was Gulf glamour meets American showmanship, a synergy that made headlines, moved markets, and proved that sometimes diplomacy isn't forged in war rooms, but in mirrored elevators and five-star suites. Critics strike back. Not everyone was clapping. As the gold dust settled from Trump's high-profile tour, critics fired back hard. To them, this wasn't diplomacy. It was deal-making, dressed in velvet. Lavish ceremonies, private jet gifts, and royal praise were seen not as national victories, but personal rewards. They asked, was America being honored, or was Trump being bought? The headlines told two stories. One praised the $3,200 billion 0 cents windstorm of deals. The other warned of blurred lines between statecraft and showbiz. When Qatar gifted Trump a $400 million 0 cents custom being 747, the backlash was swift. Legal scholars questioned if it violated the US Constitution's emoluments clause, which prohibits gifts from foreign governments. The White House brushed it off, claiming the gift was symbolic and cost-saving. But the critics weren't convinced. Human rights organizations also raised alarms. They pointed out that Trump's warm embraces with controversial leaders like Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman came amid allegations of silencing dissent, jailing activists, and even assassinations. The Crown Prince's involvement in the Khashoggi murder was still fresh in the minds of many. To skeptics, the lavender carpets and darker tarpets were distractions from darker truths. Media outlets worldwide debated whether this Middle East pageantry truly served American interests, or simply boosted Trump's global image. Editorials speculated, was this a masterclass in economic leverage, or just foreign flattery turned policy? And yet, for every finger pointed, there was a job stat waved. Boeing, Lockheed Martin, and hundreds of American manufacturers stood to benefit. 2 million American jobs, Trump repeated. But even that figure was disputed. So the question remains, did America strike a historic win? Or did Trump build his own throne in gold? The answer, perhaps, lies somewhere between the roaring engines of fighter jets and the hush of backroom deals. And in that quiet, the critics are still speaking. The shadow of the Constitution. Beneath the golden glow of billion-dollar handshakes, a storm was brewing back home. The centerpiece? A $400 million 0-cents custom Boeing 747 gifted to Donald Trump by the Emir of Qatar. Gold-plated interiors, velvet-lined cabins, and a built-in conference suite. It was a plane fit for a king. But one question refused to be ignored. Is this legal? According to the US Constitution's emoluments clause, sitting presidents are forbidden from accepting gifts from foreign governments without explicit approval from Congress. And this wasn't a ceremonial vase or a silk robe, it was a flying palace with a price tag higher than most fighter jets. Critics pounced. Legal scholars warned this could be a dangerous precedent. Was it a diplomatic token or a blatant breach of constitutional safeguards? The White House issued a swift response, claiming the plane was technically on lease and that it would save taxpayers millions on international travel. But constitutional purists weren't buying it. Behind closed doors, Congress murmured, but no formal action followed. Some saw it as a strategic dodge. Others whispered that the jet could be rebranded as an asset for future diplomatic missions. Still, the tension didn't fade, it sharpened. This moment ignited a broader conversation. Can modern diplomacy and mega-epics exist without compromising the Constitution? And if a gift this grand can be excused, what's next? What started as a glittering symbol of international friendship quickly morphed into a flashpoint of legal and ethical debate. For Trump supporters, it was just another media witch hunt. For critics, it was proof that the rules no longer applied when power and prestige took flight. In the end, the emoluments clause, long ignored, was thrust back into the national spotlight, sparked by a gift too big, too shiny, and perhaps too unconstitutional to ignore. Comic diplomacy. As the dust settled in Riyadh and Doha, one truth became impossible to ignore. This wasn't diplomacy as usual, it was boardroom strategy on a global stage. Donald Trump didn't arrive in the Middle East with battalions. He came armed with billion-dollar contracts, private sector swagger, and the kind of negotiation style that screams, "Let's talk business." In just a matter of days, Trump walked away with $3,200 billion 0-cents in deals, from defense and energy to aviation and high-tech infrastructure. It was less about statecraft and more about stock portfolios, the kind of influence driven not by troops, but by transactions. This approach raises a provocative question. Is this the future of American power? Instead of boots on the ground, will we now see CEOs as ambassadors and economic leverage replacing military bases? For a country grappling with post-war fatigue and ballooning debt, Trump's method of economic diplomacy, cutting megadeals, creating jobs, and cornering global capital, sounded like a winning formula. But was it sustainable, or was this just a uniquely Trump-style performance, one that dazzles in the short term but leaves behind legal entanglements, ethical questions, and strategic gaps? One thing's for sure, the image of Trump descending onto a lavender carpet, flanked by fighter jets and signing deals that could fund small nations, won't be forgotten anytime soon. It marked a potential turning point in how America asserts itself abroad. As future presidents consider their playbooks, they'll have to ask, should America lead with its wallet or its warnings? If the answer is both, Trump's trip may not have just redefined diplomacy, it may have rewritten the first chapter of a new global game. Trump's 2025 Middle East tour shattered expectations and redefined what modern diplomacy can look like, blending showmanship, luxury, and trillion-dollar negotiations. Was it political brilliance or headline-run theatrics? Either way, the numbers don't lie. Billions in deals, millions of jobs promised, and a global power pivot no one saw coming. But beyond the luxury jets and golden carpets lies a deeper question. Will economic diplomacy become America's new foreign policy weapon? Or was this just a once-in-a-generation spectacle? Let us know what you think. Drop a comment, hit like, and subscribe for more stories from the front lines of global power.